Well, ladies and gents, welcome to CG Reactions, and this is Unbiased History, The Mad Emperors by the channel Hattie. This is progressing slowly. This is the 10th video. We are halfway there. There are only 19 videos. This is 10th one. We saw the last video where Augustus was the first true emperor. Because Julius Caesar didn't want to become emperor, he refused the crown. Maybe if he had stuck around for a bit longer, maybe he would have become emperor eventually, but he was killed. Stabbed, what, 20 or 21 times or something? Damn, that's just effed up. Stabbing that many times. I think they just stabbed out of spite over and over again. Otherwise, he would have died by just few stabbing. 20 plus times, that's just way too much. Julius Caesar was just extraordinary. He was a great military mind like Napoleon, Alexander the Great. He would have conquered a way more places if he had lived longer. Even for whatever time he was, whatever time he was alive, he conquered a lot of places, man. That's ridiculous. He conquered a lot. Just imagine if he had stuck around longer, how many places he would have conquered. Maybe he would have conquered so many places that Rome could have been a stable region. But that doesn't say much. The reason he died was the reason he was going to die anywhere, anytime. Because the people, someone out of spite, out of jealousy, would have killed him eventually. Augustus, that was the first true emperor, but man, his own family was his enemy. People died around him all the time. Livia poisoned and killed lots of people. I don't know. I don't accept that as much like that could be true. Augustus was a smart man. I don't see him just not realizing that Livia is just, killing lots of people, his heirs and lots of people around him. I think he would have caught on eventually, but I don't think that was the case. I think the point is, whoever died back then by infection or any natural causes, people just automatically assumed they were poisoned, since they were power figures or some, next in line to throne or something like that. So they just assumed they were poisoned. I don't see as her poisoning that many people. But then again, she could be. Who knows? She could be a mastermind like that. Who knows? Let's see what she does in this video, if she is even relevant in this video or not. So yeah, let's watch it. The Mad Emperors. And people, remember, like and subscribe. And hit the bell notification, because my timing of uploading is not exact. Sometimes I upload different times. Sometimes in the evening, sometimes afternoon, sometimes morning. I don't know. It just depends. So hit the bell notification if you want to be up to date on when I upload unbiased history videos or any video. I'm gonna upload unbiased history videos every day until it's finished. So yeah. Alright, let's watch it. The Mad Emperors.
I was born 75 years ago. For 40 years I have ruled as Rome's emperor. But for all these years, I have never been the ruler of my own wife. I have seen the borders of Germania, beyond which no civilized eye may see. Behold, in chaos, a barbarian sweeps the future.
These are the Germans. What is this? Elder Scrolls Rome? I love it, man. Obviously, his name is Hattie. So, but then again, his name is Hattie, playing his fan of Skyrim, and he uses music and videos of Oblivion. So I don't know. Maybe he's fan of both. Oh, don't play that music, man.
This is the 19th of August. The year of Romulus, 767. These are the closing decades of the Julio-Claudian dynasty and the final seconds of my life.
Here comes Oblivion. Man, I love Oblivion and Skyrim so much, man. Whenever the music plays, it's just like, I love it so much that I hate it whenever the music comes. It's just, the future games are not gonna be like that, and it just saddens me every time I hear the music. Alright, collaboration.
Augustus was dead. Having been secretly poisoned by his wife, his remaining relatives mourned him, as she made the preparations for Tiberius' ascension as emperor. That of course included having Postumus executed, and later having Tiberius show up to the Senate, where he was proclaimed the new princeps.
Sam, she's killing people left and right.
He refused most titles and responsibilities they gave him, but as he would find out, the senators were men fit to be slaves. With Tiberius now the emperor, he was faced with revolting legions demanding more pay in Pannonia. To settle that, he sent his son Drusus the Younger, alongside the Praetorian prefect, Sejanus, both of whom hated each other. But then the legions in the Rhine also mutinied, so Tiberius sent Germanicus to them. Seeking to live up to his father and avenge the betrayal at Teutoburg, Germanicus calmed the mutineers for
Alright, Germanicus. Alright. I think that name was given to him later than this story, because I'm pretty sure he's gonna crush lots of Germans. Hence the name Germanicus.
endless charisma, paying their salaries out of his own pocket, and promising that anything they looted in their hunt for Arminius would be theirs to keep. Germanicus then crossed the Rhine with his legions, ransacking the Germans in a righteous punitive campaign, taking Arminius' wife as prisoner and recovering the 19th Legion's Eagle Standard. He then slaughtered his way into the Teutoburg forest, witnessing the purest essence of Germanic barbarity. Desecrated bodies, guts spilled over trees, remains of live sacrificial burnings, chaotic evil at its worst.
Yeah, that happened in the last video, didn't it? That German guy that Augustus adopted just betrayed them, and they were killed in masses.
He had his men bury the dead and honor their memory, only then returning to the campaign. Enraged, he attacked the Cherusci heartland, crushing Arminius at the Battle of the Weser River, and then honoring Tiberius by building a mount with the Germanic weapons captured, which triggered Arminius so much that he attacked again, and again Germanicus crushed him, then building an even bigger mount, honoring Tiberius, Mars, Jupiter, and Augustus. Germanicus then sailed back to Gaul through the North Sea, getting suddenly struck by a storm conjured by Neptune. But not only did Germanicus survive, but he personally rescued hundreds of soldiers by dragging them into the coast.
Yeah, okay. He could have done, who knows. But I love in this series how in the Rome's history, gods constantly interfere with storms and lightnings.
And to end the campaign in good taste, he again raided Germania, annihilating the Marsi tribe and recovering yet another.
Look at the German space, man. This the Doveti hates anybody who's not Roman.
Eagle Standard. If you still don't love the guy, allow me to quote Tacitus. Germanicus did not want any prisoners, as the extermination of the Germanic tribes was the only conclusion he saw for the war. Fucking based. Oh, and Arminius? Backstabbed by his own tribesmen. A treacherous death for a treacherous Germ. As Germanicus returned to Rome to celebrate his triumph, he was followed by his wife, Agrippina the Elder.
What is with that dies in evil woman? So if there's a woman, cries in woman like it's some kind of language or something. Man, that's something.
Together with his 5.5 children. Among them Gaius Julius Caesar, named after his great-great-great-great-uncle, dressed by his mother with a pair of...
That's exactly the same name. That could cause issues with the naming.
Small soldier boots, forever gaining him the nickname Caligula. Also, Claudius, Caligula's uncle, had just recently married to a woman that would later cuck him. Such was life for Uncle Claudius. The only other one not having a good time was Livia, whom feared that Germanicus' popularity would eventually allow him to overthrow Tiberius, even though he was extremely loyal. But hey, since when has that stopped Livia before? And so she began bitching at Tiberius to have Germanicus withdrawn from the Rhine legions, and to shut her up, Tiberius gave his nephew command over the eastern half of the empire, which was even worse, so Livia sent her servant, Gnaeus Piso, along with him, just to make his life a living hell. He would cancel his orders, counter his opinions, unmake his reforms, and...
And how does that work? She just sent a servant with him, but in the end the emperor sent him as in charge. How the hell does a servant overthrow his decisions over things? This is stupid.
Not even when visiting the ruins of Troy was he safe from his bullshit. So Germanicus departed to Egypt to get away from Piso, which Livia took as the last straw. And so, having also partaken of the divine Julian semen, she used her own black magic to conjure a poison for Piso, who then put it in Germanicus' food. Before long, Germanicus fell deathly ill, and died in front of his family, striking his wife with as much sorrow as it did anger. She immediately filed for Piso to be prosecuted for murder.
Alright, this is just getting ridiculous if this is true. She's killing, legendary names left and right. That's just effed up, man.
Thinking that Tiberius was behind this. The Senate happily obliged, condemning Piso to death. And before he could snitch on Livia, she hastened his execution. And just as things were getting bloody, Claudius asked Tiberius to let him start the Cursus Honorum, but Livia made him forbid it. He had once tried writing a history of the civil wars, and it really put Livia in a bad light.
Is that Claudius as in Tiberius Claudius? The one who built aqueducts and lots of Roman things that we even treasure today, like Romans are really advanced of, because that's a significant thing. Of all the things Roman did, I think what he did put the Romans into map for millennia, I guess. I don't know if he's that guy or not, but yeah, let's watch.
So she kept making his life miserable. The reality was, Tiberius was trapped between his mother's dictatorship and the Senate's incompetency. So he began relying on Sejanus more and more, whom used this to further his ambition to one day become emperor. And with the new heir, Drusus, hating him so much, Sejanus seduced his wife, Livilla, to conspire together with him. Convinced, Livilla had her husband poisoned, and with his death, Sejanus asked Tiberius to marry Livilla. Easy to say Tiberius refused. So Sejanus settled with pressuring Claudius to marry his relative, Aelia, whom would endlessly physically abuse him. Such was life for Uncle Claudius. Tiberius then considered Claudius as his new heir, but he backed off fearing Sejanus' wrath. Struck with grief and endless paperwork, Tiberius let Sejanus bear almost all tasks of state, secluding himself to the island of Capri, while Livia and Sejanus used his authority to either expel or execute anyone they wanted. Livia made sure to kill as many innocents as possible before her time came, secretly advising Sejanus to get rid of Agrippina and her children for Tiberius' sake, which he heeded for his own sake. One night, as the imperial family had dinner, Tiberius offered Agrippina some fruit, but she viciously refused, suspecting poison. Sejanus then used this as an excuse to accuse Agrippina of misbehavior, and her eldest son Nero of sexual degeneracy, banishing them both, and later her other son Drusus as well. The three of them will later be either beaten to death, starved to death, or in Agrippina's case, both. And since we're talking violence, some Jew with god delusions just got crucified in Judea. From here on, his followers would increasingly infest the empire with their sacrilege against the divine Caesars and overall Christ cuckery. There's something to all this, but that's for way later. And now, with most of his family now dead, Caligula and his sisters were invited to join Tiberius in Capri.
I'm surprised how that comment didn't cause an issue with his commenters and like and dislike button. That's bold.
Alongside Gemellus, Drusus' son with Livilla, whom Tiberius wished to have co-ruled the empire with him, later marrying Caligula's sisters off one by one, and later him to a girl named Junia, whom died in childbirth, so whatever. Caligula blamed Tiberius for his relatives' deaths, but whenever he prepared to stab him in his sleep, the ghost of Augustus would appear and discourage him from such a dishonorable act. Back in Rome, Sejanus had become so powerful he was the de facto emperor. He had his enemies or anyone really executed without end, had his birthday celebrated as if he was part of the imperial family, and even schemed with Livilla to ally with the surviving Julians and overthrow Tiberius, making him the regent of both Gemellus and Caligula, whom he would later betray. But even Tiberius had his limits. He might not care how many senators Sejanus kills, but threatening him and his heirs was enough. Sejanus was then called onto the Senate, where he was denounced and tried guilty of treason, with his lover Livilla being ousted as well. Sejanus would be strangled to death, and Livilla imprisoned by her mother Antonia, whom had her starved to death. But Tiberius'
Her own mother starved her to death? Damn, that's strong.
lack of will to rule the empire was indeed troublesome. So one night, as he slept, Caligula gently had him suffocated with his own bed sheets, at the bold age of 77, a far more graceful way to kill an emperor. And with his great uncle now dead, Caligula was acclaimed the new emperor, later denying Gemellus of his inheritance. That kid had gone insane over the years, and Caligula knew the last thing Rome needed right now was a madman as emperor, later having the crazy kid executed. His grandma Antonia literally killed herself over this, but oh well. Caligula was then received into Rome, cheered by the crowds as the son of the great Germanicus, leading to over 160,000 animals being sacrificed in his honor. During the first few months of his reign, he threw all of Sejanus' old treason trial documents into the fire, pardoned countless exiles and prisoners, reduced taxes to unprecedented lows, upped the soldiers' pay dramatically, and threw several games and parties in honor of his dead family members, whose remains he had recalled to Rome, and buried alongside Augustus in his
Okay, so this is the true mad emperor, huh?
mausoleum. By then, his uncle Claudius had just finished the history of the Etruscans and Carthaginians, so Caligula celebrated it by making him consul with him, mixing him up into crazy cults that costed a fortune, all for the sake of banter. But as he worked his way into the hearts of every Roman, Caligula was struck with a devastating illness. Forced into his bed, he suffered immensely, after having prophetic visions of the future and losing consciousness. When he finally woke up, Caligula had realized the truth.
Really?
He had become a god. Embracing his duty to act as a god, Caligula started a harem around his own sisters, especially Drusilla, whom he treated in all ways as his wife.
As soon as I saw these purple graphics, I knew, damn, he's making him to be a god, okay.
Despite the fact that she was married to the great-grandnephew of Lepidus. To match his divine status, the gods inflicted on Drusilla the same illness that afflicted Caligula, but she couldn't survive the divination process. In order to channel his grief and anger in a constructive manner, Caligula followed on his father's steps and marched his legions beyond the Rhine. There he would crush only one Germanic horde. All in all, his father's previous campaigns had really devastated the area, thank the gods, so instead, he set his eyes on Britannia. But to successfully invade, he would have to face Neptune, the god whose ocean storms had greatly troubled both Caesar and his father's campaigns. Standing god to god, Caligula confronted Neptune on a one-on-one combat for the fate of Britannia.
What is this, street fight? The Street Fighter fight!
Writings detailing this divine conflict have been lost to time. All we know was that after a long struggle, Caligula had emerged victorious, and then plundered Neptune's precious seashells as victories.
No more seashells, oh come on, he defeated Neptune, is that it? Really?
Spoils. Having taken too much damage, Caligula postponed the invasion of Britannia. Good thing too, as he just then learned that his friend Lepidus had been plotting against him, all while banging both of his sisters Agrippina the Younger and Julia Livilla. Ashamed at being related to such adulterers, he banished them both.
Yeah, but I guess, incest is not effed up than being an adulterer, huh? So that's fine, apparently.
Then had Lepidus killed. Later returning to attend a wedding hosted by Gaius Piso, whose wife he took a liking to. So he took her right then and there, openly telling Piso what felt like taking her virginity. Then he grew bored and divorced her the next day, doing her a favor and forbidding her from marrying Piso. That guy was trouble and everyone knew it. Caligula then experimented by marrying Lollia.
What? Okay, first of all, this guy Caligula feels like a proper emperor with all the things he's doing, becoming a proper dictator by just doing whatever the hell he wants. Now it feels like a proper emperor. What the hell is this? I hope it's...
But he wasn't into that pedo stuff.
There you go. Thank God. I'm like, what the hell?
So, as a god of divine taste, Caligula married a big-titted MILF named Caesonia, whom he showed openly naked to his friends, casually threatened to kill, and conceived a child with her, named after his late sister. He then came to understand his true nature as a new god, a new Jupiter, and yes, as Neo's Helios, the new sun. Then starting to cut off the heads of statues and substitute them with his own, ordering many temples to be built in his honor, and in time began to treat the disgusting mortals he was surrounded with as they deserved. As Caligula traveled in his carriage, he forced the senators to run alongside him, punishing those who couldn't keep up. Once, as he watched the gladiatorial matches and they ran out of gladiators, he used his powers to throw an entire section of the pleb audience into the arena to be eaten by the lions, so he wouldn't get bored. Whenever he needed money, he sent agents to rich citizens' houses to be executed and their property confiscated, never bothering to come up with some faggot-ass excuse to justify his divine whim. As he watched his prisoners being tortured and screamed for mercy, he would have their tongues cut off to enjoy the execution in peace, telling the torturers to make them feel like they're dying. One day, he had the entire Roman fleet align in a tight single-file formation alongside the Portus Iulius Bay, crossing it on horseback just to prove Tiberius' old astrologer wrong. One night, as he received the client king of Mauritania for dinner, he suddenly realized the whole concept of client kings was gay, so he had him killed, and his kingdom annexed into the empire, later sending the legate Paulinus to crush any provincial revolt.
Talk about badass, damn man! How is this emperor not very speak of? Nobody, people know obviously Julius Caesar, people know Augustus obviously. Not many people know about Caligula because I never heard of him before, but he was a badass emperor, man. He just did whatever the fuck he wanted. Okay, now I'm kind of understanding why in the past people were claiming to be gods or, making people to be godhood. One of their family member making them godhood. Him is making himself a god. I understand what's happening here. So, the way things he's doing, It's clear, like anybody would just get pissed off and kill him, poisoning him, stabbing him. People can have just, I've had enough, and just kill him with all the things he's doing. Why would people take it? But when you claim to be a god and make people believe that you're a god, doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter how brutal you are, people will be scared of you because they think you're a god. That's why people are constantly making themselves a god, or one of their dead family member making them a god, because then they can say I'm the bloodline of gods, or I'm the god. So that way people stay in line. Doesn't matter what he does, nobody's gonna do anything. That's just heavy, man.
What's there? Something he would become an expert on. And once the Jews started complaining at Caligula's statues being placed in their synagogues, he ordered that a statue of himself be placed on the Temple of Jerusalem itself, renaming it as Temple of Illustrious Gaius, the new Jupiter. As he returned his attention to the Senate, seeing the sheer stupidity and incompetence the senators displayed, for the good of Rome, Caligula appointed his horse as consul, who proved to be smarter than the whole Senate put together.
No
and with
way.
Rome now in his horse's capable hoofs, Caligula prepared to move to Alexandria, where he hoped to further understand his divinity. But just as his unrivaled banters and godly virtues made him popular with the plebs, so had he driven his enemies to the edge of envy and resentment. They were revolted by the existence of someone so divine, even more so one whom they owed their souls to. Unable to bear the thought of Caligula returning to Rome more powerful once more,
that horse is too smart to understand. His divinity makes us look bad. He should pay a lip service to us. He's a madman. He will destroy the Principate.
a conspiracy was born, led by a senator named Cassius, with Carrera being his last name, Cassius Carrera. The thing with Carrera was that, as a Praetorian guard, he couldn't stand being a constant target for jokes, being the feminine-voiced, balls-chopped manlet that he was. So one day, as Caligula addressed some actors during a festival in honor of Augustus, Carrera and 2 others ganged up on him, stabbing him to death. You could say that he lived up to his name right to the end, and beyond it as well. But killing the God Emperor, as far as that is possible, wasn't enough. No, he had to invade the Imperial Palace and kill every single member of the Imperial.
So yeah, you can say I'm a god and people will not revolt against you, but one day somebody just basically stab you and see if you die or not. You're gonna die. So yeah, that's not gonna last much longer, is it?
Family he could find, including Caesonia and their infant child, whom he had thrown at the wall and its skull crushed.
God
Such is the
damn!
wrath of ugly feminine insults. But as the loyal elements in the Praetorian Guard showed up, they eventually found Claudius hiding from Carrera behind a curtain. Then they all turned to him and proclaimed him their new emperor. As Claudius met with the Senate, he graciously pardoned all conspirators, except Carrera, who he had executed. So yeah, Claudius is emperor now. Funny that.
Okay. First of all, I think, he pardoned everybody but him, because even if he wanted to pardon him, he couldn't have, because people are pissed off that he killed the god emperor and God's infant child and, a queen. So he has to kill him to justify to the people.
You wouldn't expect someone whom Livia had raised by an abusive ex-mule driver to end up anywhere in life, but here we are. Knowing that his best strategy would be to imitate Augustus as much as possible, Claudius renamed himself after the original princeps, which would become common practice.
Yes, Tiberius Claudius, this is the guy. So he's gonna make all the aqueducts and roads and just basically whatever we know of that Romans were just extraordinarily good at. People, whenever they think Roman, they were really advanced at the time. Why? Because of aqueducts and things like that. So he's gonna do it. So if you argue, he's one of the main key figures that ever, came to power.
To start off in a good light, he exempted the ruins of Troy from taxation and affirmed the rights of Jews to... Let's hope that works out. He also built a ton of shit. Aqueducts, roads, the works. One of his big projects was to try and drain the Fucine Lake, but the drainage pipe backed up and submerged the entire effort. A humiliating affair, but such was life for Uncle Claudius. Claudius then assumed the office of censor alongside Lucius Vitellius, the father of Aulus Vitellius, a really fat cunt, remember that, using his office to purge all of his enemies from the Senate. And yeah, Claudius had enemies. Mostly senators as blasted at how he had welcomed even more civilized Gauls into the Senate than Caesar once did, killing some 35 senators and 300 equestrians in total. It's no real purge, but hey, it's a start. To help him rule, Claudius had some freedmen as advisors, among them Narcissus, his most trusted subordinate, with whom he sought to consolidate the empire. That is, annexing as many Clyde kingdoms as possible, among them Thrace, There, now we can call it Mare Nostrum. And to exploit the fact Caligula had cleared the way of Neptune, Claudius set his eyes on Britannia. As it happens, one of the Briton client tribes, Julius
Cleared the way of Neptune, and Neptune walked away crying because how he choked him out.
Caesar had set up had its king deposed, so Claudius sent 4 legions there to reassert Roman influence. The path cleared, Claudius arrived with war elephants, founding Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester, as the new capital of the province. Among Claudius's legates was a one named Vespasian, whose swift conquest of the western British coast would gain him much fame. Victorious, Claudius personally pardoned one of the defeated Briton tribe leaders, Germanicus, permitting him to live in Rome, where he would become so civilized he questioned why the Romans ever bothered conquering the mud hut from his homeland in the first place. Claudius then had a new son, naming him Britannicus, whom he sired with his third wife Messalina. And man, if you think Julia the Elder was a whore, Messalina was a nymphomaniac through and through. She fucked all men she could manage to hide from Claudius, born high and low. She once personally challenged the greatest prostitute in Rome for getting fucked by the most dicks in one night, and she won effortlessly. But besides being a degenerate adulterer, she was also a cruel hypocrite. For once she saw Claudius was welcoming Caligula's sisters back from exile, she had one of them, Julia Livilla, exiled and later killed for sleeping around with Seneca. Yes, the Seneca. But that still left Agrippina around, together with her son Lucius, a descendant of Antonia Major. Remember her? The other baby Octavia was holding? Yeah, details. But despite her mother's and grandmother's efforts, Agrippina took much more after Livia, from whom she learned all about how a Roman viper should get ahead in life. So to restore her previous status and wealth, she tried to seduce the governor of Hispania, a one named Galba, but she was rejected on the spot. He was blunt like that. Nevertheless, Messalina was getting real jelly at the popularity the Julians had with the people, and since Claudius would never have them disposed of, she came up with her own plan. First, she would wait until Claudius got out of Rome. Then she would marry one of her lovers in plain daylight with hundreds of witnesses, and then have Claudius killed and have her husband take over the empire. Somehow, astounded at her stupidity, Narcissus...
Yeah, it is stupid. Claudius is the emperor. If you want to plan, first kill off Claudius and then marry someone, and that even I could understand. Claudius is alive, you gotta marry in front of everybody and then kill Claudius thinking you're gonna be emperor. No. Only reason you were queen is because of Claudius, so this was just damn stupid.
Contacted Claudius, telling him of the whole thing. And while the emperor hesitated to punish her, Narcissus just sent the Praetorian guards to make her kill herself. But Messalina, being a woman, really sucked at suicide, so the guards stabbed her to death. Claudius now...
Being a woman... Oh man... This guy's gonna be sexist, racist, anything it can be. This is just awesome.
Had to choose his fourth wife, and given his options, he chose to marry his niece Agrippina, thus reuniting the Julian and Claudian houses. And after endless...
I mean, you're not the first in your family to be, do incest apparently.
Requests by Agrippina, Claudius disowned his son Britannicus in favor of Lucius, whom, as his new heir, would have his name changed to Nero. I love this part. And to ensure his future...
Nero, isn't that the guy who was killed in a jail with, her mother, his mother and his brother? I think 3 of them were brutally killed by that, who's it, Janus? Yeah, Janus, that purple guy. So why did it take his name, Nero?
After ascension, Agrippina had all of Messalina's old allies who might support Britannicus over Nero exiled, even killing Britannicus' tutor after he started to criticize his abandonment. And finally clashing with Narcissus, whom favored Britannicus over Nero, having him exiled to Campania. As his new heir, Claudius had Nero marry his daughter Claudia Octavia, and then recalled Seneca to serve as his tutor. But in time, Claudius began to regret his decision. For his whole life, he had been the target of jokes and manipulation by those around him. But no more. He wouldn't let his wife manipulate him for her own purposes anymore. He would have his biological son be the heir, and there was no...
Ah, come on!
Truly, a disciple of Livia we have here. Agrippina then had Narcissus imprisoned and killed, later introducing her new emperor of a teenager to the Senate. But if what Agrippina intended was to make her son a puppet of her means, then she was beyond delusional. Even as just a 16-year-old, Nero lived up to his Julian bloodline, asserting his rule over others. Firstly by scorning his marriage to that flat-chested Claudia, then by openly fucking a freed woman just to show that he could, then simply ignoring everything his mother told him, letting his wife...
These are all the checks of being how to be a better emperor apparently.
Wise advisors like Seneca do the talking. Left out in the cold, Agrippina sought to betray her own son, and so started shooting for Britannicus to be seen as the rightful heir to Claudius. What? I'm not making this up. She actually went to Nero one day and outright confessed she had killed Claudius to make him emperor, and threatened to snitch to the Praetorian Guard and make them acclaim Britannicus as the rightful emperor. And so, just to spite her, Nero had Britannicus poisoned in front of his sister Claudia, then banished Agrippina for being such a cunt, but that would prove not to be enough. Nero tried to get Agrippina poisoned 3 times, but she was even more resistant than Mithridates. He once tried to collapse the city on top of her, but she got away just in time. Then he tried sinking the ship she was in, only for her to swim to safety.
What is this, cartoon?
Island. So Nero, having run out of patience, just had a guard stab her to death. It worked, true, but he would forever be haunted by her angry spirit. But in the big picture, Nero's regime would be tested right away in the first year, with the Parthian king invading Armenia once again and installing his brother as king. To answer this aggression, Nero sent the general Corbulo to the east, whom, thanks to Parthia being overrun by rebels, proceeded to obliterate all enemies he found and retaking Armenia. He then returned to Rome to celebrate a triumph, leaving his armies to his legate Pietus, whom was then defeated and badly humiliated by the Parthians. Analyzing the situation, and frankly not caring much about the Armenian shithole anyway, Nero allowed the Parthians to pick the Armenian king, but first he would be forced to suck the Roman emperor's cock for approval, some payback for Pietus. Back to his private life, Nero finally resolved to divorce the infertile Claudia, later having her killed. He then married one of his mistresses, Poppaea, whom had just divorced his friend Otho, so he made him governor of Lusitania as compensation, so he would fuck off somewhere far away. Poppaea would then bear him a child, but it was a girl, named Claudia no less. Good thing she didn't survive infancy. But as far as ruling the empire went, Nero was of one mind with Claudius and Caligula, so he had the client kingdom of Bosphorus directly annexed into the empire. Later, Paulinus would be elected to govern the province of Britannia, accompanied by his Gallo-Roman disciple, Agricola. So yes, back to that god-forsaken island. Ever since Claudius' invasion, subsequent governors had extended its borders north, thus subjugating the Iceni, whose deceased king had willed its land to both his daughters and the Emperor Nero. The Romans then came to collect their inheritance, and after seeing just how badly polluted the British gene pool was, the Romans saw as their duty to impregnate as many women as possible with their virile Roman seed, so that future generations wouldn't suffer as much. But denied the privilege was the Iceni queen, Boudica, whom couldn't cope with her daughters getting all the fun. Enraged and beyond jelly, Boudica rallied the local tribes to revolt against the Romans, being elected their warrior queen, and setting off to destroy the civilization the Romans had brought with them. By then, Paulinus was governing the province and conducting a campaign in Wales. But when he received news from the east, he called on one of his legates to join up with him. But the fucker just refused, cowering away from the revolt.
Damn.
Deprived of reinforcements, Paulinus was forced to make do with the overall 10k men he could muster, against the 230k Britons under Boudica. With a rage to rival Dido, Boudica razed every city she got to, including
Wait a minute, what did he say?
Overall 10k men he could muster, against the 230k Britons under Boudica.
Okay, I can't understand probably. Does he saying 10,000 versus 230,000? Is that what he's saying?
A rage to rival Dido, Boudica razed every city she got to, including Camuledunum, Verulanium, and Londinium, with Paulinus rescuing as many civilized refugees as he could. As he was pursued north, Paulinus halted the march, sending the refugees ahead, and choosing to die fighting. After withstanding the Briton hordes for hours, Paulinus...
Yeah, I think that's what he was saying. Look at that. Outnumbered ridiculously.
The absolute madman had his men form up into several wedge formations and charging at the Britons, killing tens of thousands of barbarians in a non-stop bloodbath.
God
Even
damn.
completely surrounded, Paulinus crushed all resistance. Terrified, the Britons began to flee, clogging up in their carriages like the retards they were, and slowly getting themselves all slaughtered. At the end of the day, 80,000 barbarians lay dead at Paulinus' feet, having lost only 400 men, and later making Boudica kill herself. After the battle, Paulinus would engage in such a vicious punitive campaign that Nero had to transfer him away from Britannia, leaving Britannia in his disciples' hands. So let's see how Rome's doing right now. And it's burning, badly, everywhere. The Romans tried their best to put out the fires, but after calming it a bit after 6 days, it reignited and burned for another 3. As the flames raged, 2/3 of the Eternal City lay in ruins.
Entire Rome got burnt? Is this the end? How can this be the end? There are still 9 videos left. So it just happened. Rome got burned. Damn.
Countless killed, and many more displaced and homeless. Once Nero heard of this strategy, he diverted most of his own personal fortunes to assist the survivors, but that didn't save him from the slanderous accusations. Once the fires finally calmed down, Nero was left wondering, just who could have started the fire? Who could have killed countless thousands for their own aims? Who could have put the capital of pagan civilization to the torch? Who could have... It was the fucking Christians, wasn't it? Ever since the end of Tiberius' reign, that Eastern cult began spreading like a virus through the empire, dissuading the plebs from the ways of Jupiter and the divine Caesars with their monotheism. Such blasphemy was beyond the pale for Nero.
Okay, so now Christians versus Romans. Is that going to happen? Christian versus pagans.
He would do everything in his power to save Rome from the Christ cult menace. Starting the first persecution of the Christians, Nero chose to fight fire with fire, having the Christians crucified and then burned alive, using them as torches for his parties at night and as decorative posts for his gladiatorial games by day, throwing even more Christians into the arena, letting them be eaten alive by the lions. During his persecutions, Nero would have St. Peter killed, and instigating such fear in the hearts of his victims, a millennia of butthurt Christ-cult writers would come up with every possible childish slander they could think up.
Then is T and then the Antichrist Nero, after burning down Rome, hunting down our innocent brothers and sisters. Nero bad. Nero very, very, very bad. Look at the crying face. Oh my god.
About him. And thus, the first revisionist historians were born. So many Christian parasites Nero would have killed that he would forever be acclaimed as the Antichrist, given the number 666, gotten from the summation of his name when translated to Jewish numbers. And while torturing Christians is fun and all...
Oh, is that where this 666 number comes from? Ah.
Nero was far more athletically minded, holding periodic Olympic Games for contests in chariot racing, singing, and acting, winning every single competition, every single time. He was also architecturally...
I'm sure he was fair in that one. He was just better, wasn't he? I'm sure he was just better. He didn't just hoard everything because he's an emperor. I'm sure he was better.
Gifted, erecting a giant 120 feet colossus of himself at the heart of Rome. He would proudly stand there overlooking the city, until the... I don't want to talk about it. Such was Nero's skill and dedication to the Olympic Games he held, his wife wouldn't stop berating at him for spending so much time on them. One day, as she wouldn't stop screaming, he kicked her pregnant belly in a fit of anger, killing both her and his unborn child.
Damn!
But even then, she still didn't shut the fuck up. And despite being such a great emperor, Nero, just like every other emperor, would be the target of a conspiracy, masterminded by Gaius Piso. I fucking told you he was trouble. Delusionally seeing himself as a more worthy ruler, Piso started to gather support for a coup with broad support among the Senate, equestrians, and yes, the Praetorian Guard, growing more corrupt by the day. But it would all go down the drain thanks to a freed woman, as she tried to enlist an officer into the plot, but he stayed loyal to the emperor, and then ousted the conspiracy to him, testified by a senator named Nerva. Nero would then have the freed woman tortured, Piso executed, and Seneca, having been an accomplice on the whole thing, was forcefully suicided. His works on Stoicism would still be respected though. By whom? Well, let us say that Nerva is but one of a very distinct group. To calm himself down, Nero had a friend of his kill himself so he could marry his wife, but she didn't prove to be enough. So Nero, as a man of patrician taste, he also married one of his twin servants, named Sporus, dressing him in emperor's clothes, putting makeup on him, and best of all, having him castrated. It's not like he would use anything but his boy pussy anyways, he wasn't a faggot. But as they celebrated their honeymoon, Nero received work of trouble brewing in Judea. So okay, what are the Jews up to now? As always, it all came down to shekels, as Nero's high taxation was triggering the Semites to no end, and as they refused to pay up, the Roman governor of the province was forced to break into the Second Temple and take all of the withheld tax revenue. Their great temple desecrated, and above all their shekels taken, the Jews threw a great revolt, slaughtering all Romans they could find and ambushing an entire legion to its death. To deal with the Jews, Nero sent Vespasian east, alongside his eldest son Titus. But the Jews weren't the only ones complaining about taxation, among them being a Gallic governor named Vindex, whom also revolted against Nero. Not for his own sake though, but in the name of Galba, then governor of Hispania Tarraconensis. With such treason in display, Nero sent the legate Verginius to crush Vindex's revolt. His men then proclaimed him the emperor, but Verginius refused, staying loyal to a fault. But such loyalty wasn't shared by Nero's Praetorian Guard, whom proclaimed for Galba and then abandoned him during the night. Left all alone, Nero contemplated suicide. but with his wife by his side, Nero chose to persist. As they fled to Ostia, seeking to exile themselves somewhere far away, the sailors also betrayed him, denying their service. Nero then contemplated his options and chose to flee to a friend's Italian villa. There, they would have them dig up a grave for him, lamenting how the world would be deprived of his majestic artistic talent, crying out the name of his lifelong love, Sporus. It didn't take long until the news of the Senate's betrayal arrived, whom proclaimed him a public enemy. As he heard the cavalry's approach, Nero refused to let his glorious dynasty end in such disgrace. As the soldiers arrived, they found the emperor bleeding to death on the floor. Some Praetorians had remained loyal and tried to drag him out, saving him from death, but Nero dismissed their attempts, whispering, "Too late. This is fidelity."
Fidelity.
The dynasty is shattered. Nero is dead. With the Senate and the Praetorian Guard, they have sealed the lineage of divine Caesars.
Why is he playing this music, man?
Forever. The last of the Julio-Claudians passes now into history. Nero goes gladly, for he knows his death is not in vain. He takes his place with his great-uncle and his great-uncle's uncle. The early principate has ended. When the next dynasty rises, you shall be its witness. The shape of the future, the fate of the empire. These things now belong to me. Ciao, ciao.
Damn, that was just effed up, man. This episode had too much, backstabbing. Everybody was killing each other. Damn, like the politics at its highest. Everybody getting poisoned, everybody dying, everybody betraying each other. How many people died, became emperor, and went away? That was just ridiculous. Damn. Rome was such a powerful empire. Rome was crushing everybody left and right. They were really advanced with aqueducts and things like that, but the downfall is, their own people being greedy and just stabbing each other in the back. That's just effed up, and this episode had the really high number of it. It was really hard to keep track of things that were going on. This person came, then that person died, then another person came, that person died, this person came, that person died, like damn. Alright, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe.